Hey, Spencer, you're up late. Hey, Sally. So I'm so glad that Spencer stayed up late, and hopefully he can unmute himself. Last week we couldn't have Kieran unmute himself, so we're all the gang coming in. Hey, Spencer, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Being the night bird as usual.
I know you're a night bird. I'm impressed. I would stay up for you though, but I don't have to.
Thank you.
Oh my God. I was sitting here putting together some of the things I was going to chat about. And one of them was, older dogs, older people, how older dogs keep older people young. And a lot of older people worry about what happens if they don't outlive their dog, even though it's an older dog, and or if they want to get a younger dog. And I sat there and thought about rebound dog, because I think when we had a conversation, it was that a lot of the dogs are sometimes the ones that are left behind without a plan when the people either go into a nursing home or, have an unfortunate accident, and then the dogs go to the shelter.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Kieran this morning, and your name came into conversations, and I said, we're the guilty party. What you do is wonderful. And I go, yeah, literally if something happened to one of us, I'm smiling, but it's the proverbial hits the fan, doesn't it?
Really does. And we're all over 21 on this call. I hate to crush everyone. I know Sally and Connie just celebrated their 21st birthday. So
that's right.
Yeah. So I know that, I don't have to talk to you guys, but I want to welcome everyone. I know I have so many people listening to this recording, so I'm grateful. I would love one or two or three of you to come as well to the live program, but I'm so grateful that people are actually, believe it or not, buying the program off the website and completing it because they hear these weekly discussions. So without further ado, welcome to the MAAP plan post-COVID. It is the plan that you make for your pet in the event something happens to you. And since COVID, it has been brought to stark reality that things can happen that we don't anticipate. And having a plan for your pets is the most important thing to have in place. And it has brought me to meet so many people. And tonight, Sally and Connie are regulars, Spencer. Spencer is a colleague of mine, and we just did the Lollapalooza. If any of you heard the Lollapalooza on Why Do Pets Matter, Spencer was the reason for the Lollapalooza, because Spencer brings people together in the sphere of how can we help people and animals live better together. So he has Rebound Dog, the people who are thrown away, and the animals that are thrown away. He really wants to figure out a way to either help them find each other or help them sustain life together and be treated with dignity. So, of course, that's a natural for me. And of course, when Spencer and I met, he introduced me to one of my upcoming guests. Caroline Griffin was already on the soft side. She's already been on. Hey, there's Kieran. Hey, Spencer, we got Kieran again. Hopefully he'll be able to do the audible, because he wasn't able to do the audible. But it really is important to know that if you are older, you can continue to have a pet. And that's what Mark Foreman talked about when Mark and Kieran and I were together, being able to put together some insurance policy or some if you don't have the funds right now, put together an annuity that you can pay into so that the person who takes your pets can pay for the pets. So without further, hi Kieran, can I hear you? Let's see, let's hope, because last time you were the great silent man.
Yes, I think I'm here tonight.
Yay! So I'm so grateful. So we have Connie Kohler from California. We have Spencer Hoggett from England. We have Sally Anderson Bruce from Connecticut. And we have Kieran Walsh from Ireland. So this is such a mixed bag. All of us have Irish in us, except maybe a little bit Spencer, maybe not. But everybody else has Irish, because I have Irish dogs. Connie has Irish Wheaten Terriers. Sally has Irish Setters, Kieran. So you're right in your milieu.
Thank you. Thank you. I was talking to Spencer earlier today.
I know. I'm so glad I introduced you guys. I was saying at the beginning of the program that this program has brought so many wonderful people into my sphere that, of course, then I feel obligated to share them with my broader sphere, because it's all about helping people stay with dogs if they'd like to, get the dogs that are right for them, and making sure those dogs are cared for, whether they can care for them or not. So Connie and Sally, I know you might remember, but you might not. So I'm going to remind you that Kieran is the gentleman who wants to put together a program where people take a pet responsibility test, or at least a program, so they know how to be responsible pet owners before they get the dog. I know that's a really weird concept, but that's right up my alley. Pre-pave the way for success, I always say. Would that be true, Kieran?
Exact. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And then Mark Foreman was talking about how to pay for the care of your pet. And for those of you who are listening to this as a recording, I'm just going to run really quick. So just bear with me, guys, because I always have to do the MAAP plan. So you can go on my website and download all the information. But what it really truly is you have to make a plan. You have to address the needs of your pet. You have to appoint caregivers, has to be 3, and only 1 can be a family member. Because if something happens to you, your family is going to want to be with you. And if something happens to your family, you're going to be with your family. So only 1 can be a family member. The other 2, you have to find them. And I help people find them all the time. And then the last piece is to publish it. Because none of these plans that you make will come into fruition if you make them and put them in a drawer. You have to make sure that people know what it is you want to do with your pets if something should happen to you. So now I've gotten through the ritual of telling everybody what the MAAP plan is, MAAP, navigating the journey your pet takes when you can't care for it. So I'm going to check in with my listeners here, because everybody always has such great information. And I always make notes. I'll show you. I always make notes. Unlike Amy Coney Barrett, my pad is written on, not blank. And in case we run out of things to say, I haven't had that issue yet, but just in case. So I'm going to start with you, Connie. How's California? The fires, I think, kicked up a little bit.
Well, not around here, not in SoCal.
Okay.
And we are actually in fall-like weather. I'm getting up in the morning and it's very foggy. I live about 5-10 minutes from the ocean, from the Pacific. So it's been very foggy and cold, not seeing the sun till about noon. I'm in long sleeves. And we're actually supposed to get rain this weekend. Oh my God.
That's good. That's really good. And I want everyone to know that Connie's dog, Patsy, did a beautiful job at the shows. I'm going to let her tell us about it really quickly because it really was an important milestone.
Well, actually, it wasn't a show. It was a virtual AKC rally competition done all video, uploaded to YouTube. 3 AKC judges judged the 3 qualifying or not qualifying legs of your dog for both the Rally Novice and the Rally Intermediate title. The more advanced titles are yet to come because this is a pilot program. In fact, at the beginning, they only had Rally Novice and then they added the Intermediate. And my girl, Patsy, and by the way, Kieran, my maiden name is Lynch, so I'm really Irish myself. County Galway, and my paternal grandmother was a Sullivan, and her family came from County Cork. So here I am, New York Irish. At any rate, so Patsy, who is a retired conformation grand champion, did quite a bit of performance when she was going through her adolescent coat change, and the judges were kind of going, eh. So I put her Rally Novice title on her, her Canine Good Citizen Advanced title, and her Trick Dog Novice title on her. And then she finally finished her championship and her grand championship once her coat came back, and she finished in a blaze of glory. So she had a beautiful litter of puppies 19 months ago. The pick of the litter is behind me, behind the wing chair in my study. And so Patsy was kind of in and out of training for her Rally Intermediate before COVID. And then, of course, everything went full stop. And her son started on his journey to his championship, and he was a third of the way, and we shut down with the Beverly Hills Dog Show beginning of March. So AKC came up with this wonderful virtual rally program. And I put a couple of legs on the pup, Casey. And he's looking forward to his third if he ever gets his adolescent brain together. But Mama blazed through her 3 legs. We just got the qualifying score for her title leg 2 days ago, and she finished with a very, very respectable score. And I was absolutely thrilled. In fact, we heard yesterday, as a matter of fact. So this is a wonderful program for people to stay engaged. We have a long time rally practice group of about 12 people who've been getting together for years to practice in a park nearby. And our rally instructor did the videoing. And so she has been very, very helpful. And this program has been wonderful. And I think they are also doing some beginning agility titles virtually too. Of course, obedience, agility, rally really lend themselves to virtual titling because you're not in competition with any other dogs.
Right. So you can
just have and itself.
Yep. Yep. I mean, for placement you are, but who cares? So you don't need
who cares? I mean, nobody remembers if you were high in trial. They just see the letters after your name when you get the titles. So
absolutely. So everything else is good with you?
Pardon me?
Everything else is good with you?
So far, so good. Yes. Thank you very much. And, we're hoping the fires stay away. And LA County, I am happy to announce, is just about to come out of tier 1 into tier 2 as far as the rate of COVID infections. And so we might start seeing some more reopenings. And there is a real, no kidding, dog show scheduled for the beginning of December in nearby Riverside County. They're not looking so good, though, for their COVID infection rate. So we're hoping that show stays on.
Well, it's interesting you said that because we're having a dog show this weekend for Irish setters in Pennsylvania, and I'm toying with the idea of going, but we don't know what the setup's going to be if you have to sit in your car. So I have to get a little more intel before I decide to go. So thanks, Connie. Hey, Sally, how's everything? I know I saw Athena today. She went to the vet. She's not happy, but I was happy to see her.
I think you put it very well. Everyone at my house, although it's only 6:45 in the evening, is sound asleep. It was a stressful day at the vet for driving and being the recipient. But everything is great here. Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. So Spencer, tell us a little bit about you because, and Kieran, I'll be right to you, but I know that you and Spencer talked today. So I know that Connie and Sally have not met Spencer. So let Spencer tell them a little bit about what he does and why he and I and the MAAP plan and Rebound Dog are such great friends.
I've got this inbuilt passion and belief that disadvantaged people and undesirable dogs, the dogs that are in rescue that don't get rehoused, not the cute fluffy ones that goes, oh, lovely, isn't this cute, and let's take it home. The ones that have had possibly a traumatic life have got the right to actually belong in society, to participate in society. And therefore, I looked at what I could do. I could either set up a dog rescue one-man band and go bust because it's not financially viable. I could become a one-man dog trainer with a new rescue dog, and it's a slow process. So how does one scale that? And the way I can scale that, and I believe I'm on the right track, is to actually invite people such as yourself, Deborah, Kieran, together, and other pet advocates and therapists who are professionals acting it very well individually, but to bring it all together so you can actually create more social impact than you can do alone. These are wicked problems that have been around for, the ASPCA has probably been around for over a century, like the RSPCA in this country and the Dogs Trust in this country. And we've still got, and it's the same in the whole world, we've still got this huge global problem with dogs. Kieran and I talked about neutering and numbers and so forth. But what do we do with them? I believe they need to have a value in society. And one way, you guys in the States are rocking what you do with the prison dog programs. We don't do it in this. We have one in this country. I'm not saying they're the godsend, but they're one idea, and it's the fact that if you look at one of their videos, you go on one of their programs, is that the dog gets to be trained by the inmate. So the dog is trained to be more sociable. The inmate is taught life skills, but the big light bulb, and I'm not going to swear even at midnight, is that thing. Somebody's actually listened to me for the first time in my life without prejudgment. There's no label. The dog, no, doesn't matter what the dog's done, whether it's bitten somebody. It doesn't matter whether the guy, the woman stabbed somebody, been a drug offender, dealer, whatever. Somebody's without the label, somebody's doing this really deep listening. And if we can create programs and a change of attitude in society where such dogs and such people are given the opportunity to participate in society, we reduce the social costs. The cost to society is phenomenally dropped. And we need to remodel how rescue is done globally. We need to how social work is done globally. And it's my passion for the next 5 years, just bring it all together and let's remodel it. Do what Tesla did for the motor industry. Yeah, let's innovate and let's become disruptors in what's been gone and say, oh, we're coming out of COVID. Oh, let's just go back to being a rescue centre and bumming around for charity money, etc., etc. It's a broken model. It hasn't solved the problem, so something needs to be done. And if I can I don't know the answers, but I know how to get you together. And that's what Rebound Dog, it's a platform to bring you together.
It's absolutely true. And I thought of you this week, Spencer, because someone put up on Facebook the lament. And Connie, you've probably seen this, where don't tell me what kind of dog I can have. I'll have what I want. I want a certain kind of temperament. So you want a Wheaten Terrier. I want an Irish Setter. Sally wants an Irish Setter. Kieran, weigh in. So I actually said something due to probably the influence of Spencer. And I said, listen, there's got to be a better collaborative way to have that conversation, because if you keep telling me that I want the dog I want without talking about what it is that we can all do together, it creates that barrier. And I know that Kieran's going to come up in a minute and talk about, responsible ownership. I think that there are responsible breeders who need to be protected, right? But there are also responsible puppy buyers that we need to mentor. And Connie, I know that I'm speaking to the choir here. However, a number of breeders don't necessarily mentor their puppy owners. Maybe the ones who show, in obedience, in, rally, in breed. We'll mentor those because they're right there. But and I'll raise my hand. I don't know that I mentored everyone. I kept in touch with everyone, but I don't know that I called up and said, how's everything going? But I think if we're really going to do what Spencer hopes to do with the dogs that are misfits or not, I think every dog needs to be able to find a home. I think everyone needs to figure out how to be a responsible owner. And I think using dogs as a rehabilitation tool for prisoners, because most of the time, at least in my neck of the woods, people who are in prison for really terrible crimes started with animal abuse. And so if we can figure out how to have them understand the value, the human animal bond value, so that they feel valued, the animal feels valued, they're creating value because this dog is going to go to someone who may not be a really good pet trainer. But if the pet trainer takes one of Kieran's responsible dog ownership courses, passes it, and then gets one of the dogs that's trained in a prison, that sort of sets everybody up for the need for a MAAP plan, because that dog's going to stay with them for the rest of their life, and they want to make sure it has a good home. So it's a beautiful cyclical. Go ahead.
Well, if I may add to the conversation too, as far as people and dogs who have been abused and trying to match them up with each other. I have been involved in my local Southern California Wheaten Club breed rescue for a number of years. I chaired it for a number of years. And also through my obedience club, I became involved with a group called America's Vet Dogs, not in veterinarians, but in veterans from the armed services. And this group was actually a spinoff of Guide Dogs for the Blind. And it was put into place following all the returning veterans with PTSD from the Middle East, from Iraq and Afghanistan. And typically what America's Vet Dogs does is they take a lot of rescue dogs, not all, but a lot of rescue dogs retrain them and rehome them with veterans who are either physically and or psychologically wounded from their war experiences. And it is a fabulous, fabulous program. So we have a community of rescue dogs who are bonding with people in great need who have done great service for their country. Have been horribly damaged by war. So there's a whole other community in addition to the prison community that we're helping in the United States with rescue dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. Kieran, tell us a little bit more about the responsible dog ownership test, because I think this is brilliant. Of course, in the United States, people don't necessarily, I want to caveat that sometimes people who buy dogs don't want the breeder in their face. They want to buy it, give them their money, and never see you again. And that's always something that's a hardcore decision a breeder has to make, whether or not to sell that dog to that person or keep that dog. But I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I know you and Spencer have talked about it, and the fact that you have to figure out what responsibilities come with this dog, especially when they grow up or when they get into the naughties, which Connie, you and I have never had a dog in the naughties.
I got one right here lying behind me.
Yeah.
19 months old.
Right. I'll give a quick rundown, Deborah.
Sure.
I think I was talking to Spencer for about an hour and a half earlier, and it's very strange the way we've so much in common through experiences and everything else. And we spent a long time thinking and looking at the problem in almost exactly the same ways, coming to almost the same conclusions. And as Spencer said there, the SPCAs have been around for almost 100 years. And when I looked at the problem, I worked as a volunteer in a rescue shelter for a few years, and the key issues that kept coming up and up and up again and again were, irresponsible owners. And then if you actually ask anybody, well, what does a responsible owner actually look like? Then, it could be
150 definitions.
150 definitions and no joint thinking and nothing clear. And that debate usually fizzles out with, get the dog microchipped and get the dog neutered. And there's a few ways to look at responsible ownership. And I think the starting point is actually the state rather than the owner. And if you think of it this way, that now my late mother was one of these people, and she actually drove a car. She was one of the first lady drivers in the country, and she was the first commercial driver in the country, but she never did a driving test. She never.
Kieran, just a detail.
No, this was actually normal. You see, there was no need for a driving test for the first drivers. There's very few cars on the road. And it's only later when you get more cars on the road, and then it's a problem. Well, then, regulation comes in and so on. But the thing is, as I say, the SPCAs have been around for about 100 years. And I looked at the statistics just for Ireland on stray dogs. And the government first produced these about 20 years ago. And since then, the number of dogs going to dog pounds has never dipped below 9,000. Now, you might say that's a very small number, but then if the number's of 9,000 going to dog pounds, then the number of dogs being put down reflects that eventually. And like in the States and in the UK, it's almost, you see the numbers have never sort of dipped. The numbers are always...
You have to keep that number in order to keep in business.
Okay, there's a slightly different argument, but a true one, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But, when it comes to neutering, you could neuter every dog in Ireland and the UK, across Europe and the US 2 or 3 times. And as long as the puppy farms are allowed to continue, that number will never drop. Because and so the way I look at this is, as Spencer was saying, we've to find ways to innovate. Mm-hmm. That's the key one. Yep. And I would say the quickest and most valuable way to innovate is to look at the balance sheet when somebody gets a dog. And quite simply, a dog is in financial terms, very simply, it's a liability. The money only goes in one direction, either to purchase it or to keep it fed or to keep it. And I think the best innovation that we could pull off is to change the dog from being a liability to an asset. So in other words, the dog will be responsible for bringing money into the house. Now, that sounds a little bit crazy, but let's look at it in a few different ways. At the moment, generally speaking, if you have a policy with an insurance company for your household insurance, then your car insurance will be a bit less, and then they'll throw in the pet insurance as well. Abracadabra. Now, there's no logical way why that can't actually be put in reverse order. So let's say you were a very good dog owner and you have a few bits of paper and a few certificates to say, well, I've done this course in basic responsibility and I've attended a couple of dog shows and I bring the dog to the vet and he's insured and everything. Well, then you actually know what you're about. So your car insurance should be a bit less because you know how to mitigate against risks and against liabilities and other possible costs. So let's look at this from another possibility. You have an 8-year-old, and the whole name of the game at the moment is, oh, well, get your marks early and then get into the top grades. So then when you get into you get into the university a lot earlier and so on. But if you have an 8-year-old who takes on the responsibility of trying to figure out how a dog should be treated, looked after, and everything from simple things like behavior, how to early spot a disease or depression in the dog, how to work with a dog trainer for obedience, then what does it mean in terms of insurance and the basic legalities and so on, then you basically have an 8-year-old that, say after a year, 2 years doing this, has done things that would be way above the call of, say, project management at university level, for the simple reason they haven't just studied it, they've lived it.
Yeah.
And in living it, they've met the insurers, they carried out the transactions, they've met the vet, they've met the dog trainer. So then you have an 8-year-old that would, from that moment on, have a resource that should later be acknowledged, not just on the CV, but maybe as points in a university or whatever. And, so if you think about it this way, to do a pre-university course, you're talking about a few $100s or a few thousand or whatever. And if you'd something like this, with maybe the universities coming in at some point saying, well, actually, we will recognize that program. So I would say financially and every other way, it is possible to completely turn around the trend.
Because you're giving them the opportunity to learn a skill when they're young that they can then be proficient in and maybe get into what Connie's into, rally and agility and things like that, but value it. Because usually we put those things, and I'm sorry to interrupt Kieran, but I'm thinking out loud. Usually we put those things as a hobby, but you're thinking this is a really valuable asset that if you learn how to take care of a dog and be a responsible dog owner, it'll bleed over into your schoolwork, how you take care of yourself, how you take care of your home.
Yeah, that's it. So the course that we've put together, it's a very simple one, and it's more academic than there's almost no actual dog training in it. It's just, if you like, the do's and the don'ts in the background. So we start off with, well, if you're thinking about getting a dog, how does this fit into your lifestyle? And we'd have a link to an article.
Dog ownership 101, right, Connie? Dog ownership 101. What is it like to get a dog? Well, forget about sleeping. Remember, you have to get home and let them out. Cats are different. Yeah, it's pet ownership 101, dog ownership 101.
Yeah. So it's anyway, I was trying to get some of the rescue shelters and even the SPCAs to take this up, and I was totally shocked with the resistance. It was unbelievable. Like some of the comments, I'll put it this way, even after a couple of months canvassing them, there was about 3 that had half an interest. And the few that spoke to me, that actually spoke honestly, they said, no, that would be competition for us. And the most honest comment I got was, well, if we asked any prospective owner to do this, it'd take too much work and they'd go to another charity. And then our grant would be in danger.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense to me, because I would think correct me if I'm wrong, Connie. You worked in rescue. I worked in rescue. I know Sally has been in rescue as well. But what comes to mind for me is that if this was put into practice, where people had to take a little bit of a test in order to get a dog from you, it would take away the subjective evaluation that rescues do of people that may or may not be accurate.
Yeah,
I'll chime in with that one.
Right, Spencer?
I've been subject to this, and I won't get on my soapbox, but I've got a big, and so Debbie, my wife, we loathe that side of rescue. Yeah. It's, I'll be polite, who the hell are they to say who we are? We've been rescuing and living with dogs. We've been married 40 years, a year longer than yourself, but we've been around dogs for all our life. Yeah, and somebody comes in and says, we had one years ago, and they came in and went right through the bedrooms in case we've got reptile snakes upstairs or something. Then they get the next biggest gripe I got. Oh, you can't rescue that dog. Why not? You never told me. Oh, your Dachshunds and the Shih Tzu we had at the time, they're intact. Yeah. We've never had a problem introducing spayed rescue animals, dogs, into a mixed family of unneutered dogs, even when we've had a yard that's 6 foot by 6 foot in the back and had 5 dogs at a time. And it's just 2 big hates of mine. But yeah, you touched a sore point. I'll shut up.
It's a very sore point, because it's a sore point for me when people start evaluating other people's abilities to have animals instead of doing an objective test like the one Kieran's thinking about. Yep. Here, this is what dog ownership 101 is. Do you think you can do this? Because when I stopped working, Sally might remember this, when I stopped working in 2006, when Drew went to, 1996, when Drew went to school, I started a business called Pet Network, Your Connection to the Right Pet. And my husband made me stop doing the work. Why? Because Kieran, I was way ahead of my time, and I did what you did. I would sit down with people and say, okay, so what is it you think dog ownership is? How are you going to accommodate the dog having to go out? Are you going to have it spayed or altered? Are you going to keep it intact? Blah, blah, blah. And no one would buy a dog after I was finished with them, because they didn't want to make the commitment. And my husband goes, that is such a bad business model, because, you're talking to people out of the dog. I said, they're not ready. The mother doesn't want it. The kids and the father want it, but the kids and the father aren't home to take care of it. So who's going to take care of it? The mother. So why should that happen? That's not fair. And usually it works out. The mother falls in love with the dog and is glad she's got it. But why does she have to, why does she have no voice? So I love this, because, when you go to a rescue, you go to a breeder, and I have to say, I've turned away certain people who have said to me, I'm coming to pick the puppy out of your litter. And I go, yeah, that's not happening. And I do it for 2 reasons. One is I bred the litter for me, so you might take the puppy I'm keeping, and that's never happening. But I know Connie will bear this out as well. I know what every puppy's personality is like. And so I'm not giving the wild man of Borneo to an older couple who want to take long walks in the woods with the dog. I'm going to give that to the young guy who wants to go hiking every weekend, and the dog will be first up the mountain.
Or jogging every evening after he gets home from work or whatever. Right. I do exactly the same thing. Kieran and Spencer, I am a breeder as well, a very responsible breeder. And when I interview people for puppies, I mean, when you are there from the first breath that they take until they are placed in a home, those puppies, and they change every day in terms of their personalities. Yep. So those of us who really are responsible breeders, and it is a huge money losing proposition, as opposed to the puppy mills, as we call them here in the States, or the puppy farms, as you call them across the pond. When we are breeding, I breed just like Deborah. It's because I want a show prospect for me. for the next generation in my breeding program and to improve the breed. We are now called preservation breeders in the States, and that's really the truth. So I go through an interview process with the couples, the individuals, the families, whoever, to see how they are, and they do get the puppies that I pick. I mean, there has to be a mutual decision, obviously, but it's the puppy that is best suited for their particular circumstance. And just Kieran, to tag on to what you were saying about the shelter's receptivity or not, about your program, we have had similar programs here in California where some of our rescue groups and state dog club federations have actually put together really, really good educational programs for shelter personnel and also for prospective owners. And nobody wants it. Absolutely nobody wants it. It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And some of these programs that we put together are really, really comprehensive. And it's a crime and a shame.
Because what Kieran's doing and what you probably did in California is you're creating that ability to know what you're getting into before you get into it, and know what the responsibility is going to be long-term, short-term, which is why the MAAP plan is so, popular, because it's a long-term, short-term plan about taking care of your pet. And Kieran's sitting there going, well, even before the MAAP plan, you need to do this little training. So you sort of like my business model, which didn't work very well because I kept talking people out of pets, but you really need to know. And I think that, and Spencer, to your point, you don't want to be so intrusive and make people feel, because I had a guy who came here once and went to a rescue, wanted to pick up a dog, and they grilled him. And he said, I'm not going to buy a dog from there. I'm going to go to another rescue because, I'm not going to get grilled there. There has to be a balance between education, compassion, emotional support, training support, so that every placement is evaluated in a collaborative way, not to tell Spencer, no, you can't have that dog, but rather say, well, let me ask you a little bit. This dog's going to grow to be 80 pounds and fine. And is there a possibility that they would get too big or too small, but not to presume that the dog's going to be too big or too small, or not to presume that, because you have dogs that are intact, to get a dog who's spayed or altered, or I have intact dogs. I have dogs and bitches. I have both. And, we don't have litters that we don't plan, except if my husband's in charge, but that's another story. So we don't have puppies that we don't plan. And, it just takes education, which is what Kieran's saying. If you're going to buy a dog from Connie or I, and I'm thinking, Connie, that this would be a great program for breeders to give to prospective owners, to say, listen, these are my dogs. This is a great program, Pet Ownership 101. Fill this all out, study this, answer the questions, and then we'll talk more. So, Kieran, that's a thought. Going to breed clubs, not just to ASPCAs who don't want you because they want to do what they want to do, but going to, breed clubs and saying, listen, maybe this is something your breeders would want. I mean, they know it all too, which of course I feel sometimes that way. And I'm sure Connie does, that I know who I want to pick for my owners, but maybe we can be a little more open to being objective and allowing people to understand what the responsibilities are of getting a pet. And then that would open, Kieran, I think what you're doing is wonderful, because that opens the opportunity to have a deeper conversation. Not just me telling you what I want you to do with my dogs, but rather, wow, you answered this question, ABC or whatever. That's really interesting. Tell me a little bit more. But we would have to really create that ability for the breeder or the rescue to understand the value of the information and to pursue more information. And not in a way that turns people off, right, Spencer? But just allows everyone to learn more about the other one.
Well, and another thing that a slew of us responsible breeders here in the States do, I don't know if they do in the UK and Ireland, I suspect they do, but certainly I'm sure Deborah does it. I do it, all my friends do it, is when we send a pup to its hopefully forever home, we always sign a contract, even if the puppy is to be a pet. And it outlines the responsibilities of a responsible dog owner. At least mine does, and I'm sure Deborah's does, and she's an attorney. Including, the annual health checkups, and if God forbid something happens where you cannot keep up, you cannot keep the dog no matter what the dog's age, call me. I will take the dog back and make sure that it is placed properly. I am there for the life of the dog as the breeder. And we also always send the new owners home with what we call euphemistically a puppy packet, which is generally a big folder full of all kinds of information.
Specific to that breed.
Specific to that breed, specific to that breeding program and dog. I send all my pups home with a booklet, which is in my bookshelf behind me, prepared by our national breed club, the Soft-Coated Wheaten Terrier Club of America, of which I am now unfortunately the treasurer this year. Oh my God. And and it is called the Soft-Coated Wheaten Terrier Owner's Manual, and it is published by the club and available for all owners and breeders. And typically the breeders always have that in their puppy packet. Then there's always the pedigree, always the health records of the parents, including all the genetic testing that was done. This is why it is not a money-making proposition by any means. And everything about the temperament, because I not only do confirmation, but obedience and performance events, I always have a big load of information about training resources. And I research where obedience clubs are that offer puppy manners classes and later on the full gamut of obedience classes in the vicinity of my owners, because I'm very plugged in with all the obedience clubs in Southern California, and et cetera, et cetera. So that too is a very important thing for a rescue dog as well. And we sent, when I was rescue chair, and my successor always sends home the Soft-Coated Wheaten Terrier Owner's Manual and all kinds of information, especially about training, because most of these rescue dogs need some sort of remediation. They're traumatized, or they have fear issues or whatever. But the best thing you can do is to get them into training with the new owner, of course. And so we research that and provide that information as a standard operating procedure.
And what's interesting is if they had Kieran's test before they got the Wheaten that didn't work out, either because the Wheaten was poorly bred and had some temperament issues, or right, the owner was poorly bred and had some temperament issues.
Right.
But if they had gotten through that, they might have said, well, maybe the Wheaten Terrier isn't for me. And what I do with my Irish, and Kieran, this is something to consider as well. How much money do you have to spend on veterinary care? Because there are certain dogs that have very few maladies. They're really, they're pretty healthy dogs. Golden Retrievers aren't one of them.
No,
Labrador Retrievers aren't one of them. Irish Setters, we have bloat and we have osteosarcoma. Other than that, we're pretty healthy, but we do have skin issues too. And if you get a dog with skin issues, but these are the kind of things that when you go to a breeder, which is why I think that your program, and we'll have to talk offline later, might be good to bring to breeders, because it'll give them the opportunity to send, and maybe some of them do, but most of them don't, create their own questionnaire on what's a responsible owner. But because we want to know what it is you consider, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kieran, I might be off in the weeds somewhere, but if you want to be a responsible owner, these are the 10 things you need to understand about dog ownership. And then if you want to be a responsible Irish Setter dog owner, these are the 20 things, because I'll give you 10 more things. And if you want to be a Wheaten Terrier, these are the 20 things, because she's going to give you 10 more things. So you have your basic 10 questions about dog ownership, which doesn't drive you away like Spencer did, like, who the heck are you to tell me whether or not I can, get this dog? But rather language it and spin it in a way that gives you the opportunity to learn more about the pet owner, and the pet owner to learn more about you. Because as I said at the beginning, the mentorship of people, either the rescue or the ASPCA or the breeder, if it's a responsible breeder, you know, puppy mills and puppy farms are not keeping in touch with their owners. I'm just saying that's never going to happen. But people like us keep in touch. And so for you, that might be one of the better ways to set this up so that it becomes part of the lexicon or part of the ownership. Or the other thing I was thinking is when you get a license, when you apply for a license for your dog, you know, have the towns and villages say, okay, we have sort of like getting your driver's permit, right? We all remember getting our driver's permit. You had to know what a stop sign was, right? It was very elementary.
Not my mother, not my mother.
Yeah, your mother didn't, but she didn't care about stop signs anyway. I know that. She's telling me that from heaven. But you get your learner's permit right before you get behind the wheel of a car. Why wouldn't you get your learner's permit before you get a pet? And that might be something. I don't know, Spencer. What do you think? That might be something.
I
that
think
would
it's
really
interesting
benefit.
because I've seen similar. I used the example of prison dogs and things, and kind of was picking up on the vet side, as in the war vets, and we see that over in the UK as well. It's happening, and I've digressed. Yes, it would work because one thing that touching on this issue of the rescues in the UK, what they're doing is driving people away from rescuing dogs in the UK, and they're fueling. And the word is fueling what we call the East European market of puppies from like Romania and such places that are coming over at vast costs. And as far as Borneo, I saw online that Borneo, India, China's a different. The Far East is slightly different because of the what happens to dogs over there. But it's the rescues of. You've got a Facebook group in the UK about dogs or dog lovers, and there's vitriolic attacks of. And there's for and against. It goes on for thousands of posts, and most people saying, "Yeah, I go to Romania because I can get a dog like that. I can rescue dogs because nobody asked me these questions because I've got a 4-year-old.
Up in the street, and it could be owned by somebody, but who knows?"
Yeah, exactly. But it's fueling another market. And you're thinking of what Kieran was saying about seeing a resistance from the rescues. I've seen a rescue. I've stopped using the word prison dogs. I use it amongst people like yourselves. You understand what I'm on about. We go to somebody else. When I looked at doing something like this 4 years ago, on my 60th, when we went out and raised food for dogs for the homeless people, you start saying prison dogs, and it puts this box under this box. You know, talking in the hands. It puts this box, and there's one organisation in Scotland where the legislation is different to England. Does a prison dog program. Nobody in England, in the UK, does one, and they just shut up and they don't want to know. I was saying there's a service company that, like you have the private prisons, that they're doing one in Australia, and they're talking about bringing it into the UK, and it might be the backdoor way, but it's like everything. You always have to look at this second way of finding an answer. Like, I've got this fixation of what I want to do. Kieran's got this fixation of what he wants to do, but it's only by talking like yourselves and bouncing ideas and go, oh, hang on a minute, well, that's a good idea, and it does. And it goes back to this idea that I've got, that the dog becomes valued, and you start to reduce. Ultimately, it's going to take another 100 years. It'll start, if what Kieran puts in place and it goes for the breeders such as yourself, it starts to reduce the amount of dogs that go into rescue.
Yep.
Not all of them come from yourselves, but some come from the breeders. And there's a puppy mill, puppy farm, horrendous problem.
Yeah, well, people here absolutely throw away expensive breed dogs as well. And expensive breed dogs, I mean, Cavachons and Labradoodles. Yes. And, you know, so they throw them away because they have issues, because the breeding is, I mean, you're doing the best you can. People want these dogs, so people are breeding these dogs, but you don't really have, you know, a health base for them or anything like that. So you're sort of shooting in a barrel and hoping for the best. But if people understood from Kieran's, you know, Dog Ownership 101, this is what you might want to look for in a rescue dog. This is what you might want to look for in a breed dog. I don't think people do. I think so I know I've said this to Connie before, and I'll say this and Sally before. People do more research on buying a refrigerator than buying a dog.
Yes, they do. And in fact, Deborah, that and something that Kieran touched on a few minutes ago, the two big screening mechanisms I have for even filtering out people who contact me by email, which of course is the principal way that people get a hold of me. I am on our National Breed Club breeders list, which is, you know, very heavily vetted, and you have to be a member of the national club, so on and so forth. But if I get one or both of the following questions: how much does your puppy cost? And the second is if they spell the breed, not Wheaton like the color, but Wheaton like the town in Illinois with an O-N rather than an E-N, that immediately tells me, and my friends are all the same way, that immediately tells me they have done zero research. When I follow up on a prospective owner, it's when they have contacted me and said, you know, I have had Wheatons, you know, before, however many they have had, and I just lost one to old age or, you know, whatever. And I'm, you know, I am dying for another puppy. And they give ample evidence that they are responsible Wheaton owners. Or they say, you know, I have really researched the breed and I have gone through the National Club website. Ours happens to be outstanding as far as the breed information, everything from soup to nuts, grooming to health, and everything in between. And they say, you know, I have thoroughly researched the breed, and, you know, I found you through and most of the people who do contact me have found me through the National Club's breeders list. That's when I follow up. But the first crack out of the box, if they're asking me how much my puppies are, and that, oh, well, they talk to a puppy breeder or a Wheaton breeder in Ohio or Pennsylvania or wherever the big puppy mills are for all breeds of dogs in the United States, they are off the list.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because they could be great homes. It's just that, as Connie said, and as Kieran has found and I found, people don't do their homework. They, you know, it's, I say this, and I say this with all love and affection to everyone who's listening. It's an impulse buy. You want it today. And if you want a dog today, you're not getting a dog from Connie or I, because we don't have any.
Right.
So if you really want that dog that has a mentor, that will take the dog back if something happens to you. So part of the MAAP plan, right? Connie said it. I do it all the time as well. If something happens to you short-term, long-term, I had a gentleman who had a triple bypass, and I took the dog for a year and then returned the dog because he needed help. And what was I going to do? Say, no, I'm not taking the dog back. And I didn't charge him because, well, that's just me because I'm crazy. But, you know, it's important to me that the dog was in a good spot. So Kieran, I'm so glad you're here. Spencer, I'm so glad you're here. I am so thrilled. We're 22 minutes over because we just have had a wonderful conversation. I'm going to wrap up with, I'd really like, Spencer, for you to start, then we'll go to Kieran. Last, some really great thoughts for people who are on here to hear about what you do and how it really relates to why dogs should stay in your life. You shouldn't get rid of them just because you're old. And, you know, just being able to make a plan might enable you to adopt a dog that otherwise wouldn't be adopted because of issues. And then there's people who are going to teach you how to take care of them.
Why? Going back to what I said earlier, they listen. When you've had life, I'm trying to be polite and not use too many profanities, but when it's kicked you in the teeth, and we've been kicked in the teeth numerous times, that animal will just sit there and listen. And whether you want to be soppy and pour your heart out, or it's just a friend, whether it's just walking, I don't get that emotional a lot of the time. So it's not really a therapy dog, but somewhere they probably are. They're a friend in need, and they don't prejudge.
Right. And you know what? I don't think there should be anybody who is too old to have a dog just because they're old. If they feel they can't take care of the dog, there are always ways to find people and give people jobs who can help you walk the dog or groom the dog. All you need to do is have them take one of Kieran's responsibility tests so they know what they're doing. But even Kieran's 8-year-old story. So the 8-year-old learns how to take care of a dog. Well, the 8-year-old could also learn how to take care of the dog of the neighbor who's 80. And they're learning so many skills, talking to older people, learning about the war, whatever it is. They're learning so much that, you know, that interaction that we've lost, Spencer.
Yeah, and the other thing, if you're thinking about responsible dog ownership, is think there was several years. We've got a 15-year-old Chihuahua that we had from several weeks old, and it was a handbag dog. It was rescued. It probably came out of a puppy farm, and it was when everybody had the female celebrities had them in their handbags, and they're not. This thing was like a piranha. His teeth, one minute he'd be cute, and the next is zip. And we've got scars, but you don't. You live with. That's what he's probably bipolar or something. Yeah, he's slowed. He probably is. You know,
Hopefully at 15 he's slower on the bite now.
Yes, he can still do it a bit, but it doesn't hurt. It doesn't pierce the skin now. But yes, he's slowed down, but he still tries sometimes. But so think what the breed is. Just because it's cute and the latest thing, we've had Shih Tzus and the pedigrees are Dachshunds and they're stubborn buggers. Yeah, and they got a big bite. Yeah, you've had the big ones. We've got the smooth-haired miniatures. And think about you talked about the costs. Think about the Dachshund, just several thousand on his back for emergency surgery. Yep. It was either that or it wouldn't be here today. Yep. And he's recovered 95%. But you have to look in your MAAP plan, Deborah. It's thinking about what those costs are going to be.
Yep, absolutely.
Is it right? It isn't a toy. And this is what's grating me with this thing that's going around with coronavirus. Oh, let's rescue a puppy from the puppy rescue centre. Oh, isn't it cute? Aren't we doing wonderful? I'm not convinced because the amount of relinquishments is going to be horrendous.
Yeah, I'm hoping that everybody decides. So when everybody comes up with they're going to return them. I said, well, let's put something in place to not make that so easy. Not that the dog should stay somewhere where it isn't wanted. This is a delicate balance. But if you give them the support because they haven't taken Kieran's test, so they don't know what responsible dog ownership is long term, just short term, that you can really help them choose to try to work it out. And if not, the dog has had hopefully some home training, some in-house training, and so we'll make a better pet. I mean, it is a conundrum, but let's think of the positives, like both you and Kieran do, and think of how we might keep the dogs or place the dogs somewhere else that would work for them. So, Kieran, what are your wrap-up thoughts?
I suppose it's very simple. If you're not happy to give your 8-year-old the keys of your car and say, just see how you get on there, darling, then think twice if you're bringing, because when it comes to, bites and accidents, the reality is that the big wonder is why there's so few. That there's so many near misses time and time again. And that is, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a sort of inadvertent reckless endangerment that you're bringing into the house. But what's sort of weird is all of the charities that get money from the government, they never even mention this at any time. So that would be the final wrap up.
Yep. And the animals are really important to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the care that you're going to give them. Sally, what's your final takeaway from this?
Well, I was thinking that one good question to put on your questionnaire, Kieran, would be, what would be the one reason you would give the pet back? I know that was one that was asked at Animal Welfare, which I work for. And the person said, basically one thing is that it bites. And they said, I would give the pet back if it bit someone. So if you ask that question up front, it kind of gives you a heads up to, pets that would be great and some that, are the horrible Chihuahua that would, bite you. So.
Or the Dachshund, as we call them in my life, rodent dogs. So although Buffy never bit, she only bit big dogs like Dobermans and Rottweilers so she could have her life taken in an instant. But she never bit people, just big black dog sheep bite. So she was really bad. Connie?
Well, I think again, for me, the big question to ask a responsible dog owner is, again, my number one trigger. Can you afford not only the purchase price of the dog, but the upkeep, maintenance, and particularly veterinary care for the life of the dog, which in my breed can go to 17 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that we have a module in the course about the costs.
Yeah, because you know
Um,
the cheapest part of any animal that you purchase
Yeah.
is the purchase price.
You bet.
Mm.
Absolutely. I mean, the vet bills can be horrific. As an example, my now going on 11-year-old girl, who is also a retired show dog and now a certified therapy dog, she has been for the past 4 or 5 years, had to have a spinal laminectomy when she was 6 because her daughter, who was lying at my feet, got rough one day when she was about 6 months old, wrestling with her mom. And I heard this wild yelp. And it turned out that she had trauma to her lumbar spine. And my veterinary orthopedist and my primary care vet wanted to do it before she developed any arthritis. So 6, absolutely, we had to do it. $10,000 later, and thank goodness I had pet healthcare insurance through the American Kennel Club because they paid 80%. But some people might not even be able to afford the extra 2% out or 20% out of pocket.
Right.
Extra
Or the payments every month to maintain it. But it should be on your questionnaire, Kieran. I'm glad Connie brought that up because, you know, can you afford insurance? So when you say, you know, what would be the one thing that would give back? And somebody might say, well, if the dog needed $10,000 worth of health care, I'd have to turn the dog into the vet or turn the dog back into the shelter.
or euthanize it.
Yeah, or euthanize it. So what's
Yeah.
the answer? The answer is, well, do you have, you know, $40 or $50 or $100 a month to maintain an insurance policy? Because that might be the easiest way for you. Did you know about this? And I know here in the United States, I don't know if it's true with you guys over in Ireland and England, but it's very difficult for veterinarians to talk about insurance, which seems really stupid. But they just don't talk about when this person comes in with this cute little puppy. They don't want to talk about the things that could happen.
Right.
And why you need to put the insurance on them before they step on the, you know, the rusty nail outside when they're a baby puppy, or eat the rusty nail.
I was just going to say, ingest it. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
That's more likely. And,
You know,
and
you really need to do that first. And that really helps, you know, this is the MAAP plan, so I'll sneak it in now. This really helps also for someone who takes your dog, because if you have an insurance policy in place, that dog's cared for. So it really is an important piece of the pie that needs to be discussed. So thank you all for coming. It is now 7:31. I am so grateful. Spencer and Kieran, you're going to bed now, I know, because it's like 1 o'clock in the morning, or 1:30, I think. I'm not quite sure. It'll be daylight savings time over there soon, so it'll only be like 12:30 next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Connie. Thank you,
our
Rose.
pleasure. Thank
Love you guys. Kiss your dogs for me. And
You
this is
bet.
Yeah,
Karen
Deborah.
Hamilton. You're here for the
Thanks. Bye.
I look forward to all of you getting in touch. Bye.
Will do.
Bye.
Thanks very much.